And now India is manufacturing weapons that countries want to buy. An aircraft carrier which is $12 billion, $15 billion, $20 billion made by private companies. Less than 6 years or approximately 6 years, our defense exports have doubled. Today, we have more than 600 drone manufacturers in India, suppliers from the private sector, but complete weapon platforms were not being made by the private sector in India. India's defense exports have surged past 1.78 lakh crores. And this is phenomenal. This translates to roughly around $18.5 billion plus. What is the miracle that happened in India? Suddenly, a net importer of weapons, the top importer of weapons in the world, some years back, is today becoming one of the biggest exporters. Hi, I'm Major Gaurav Arya and you're watching Open Collar. Defense production soars to a record 1.78 lakh crore in fiscal 25-26. India's annual defense production has surged to an all-time high of 1.78 lakh crores in the financial year 25-26. The Defense Ministry said on Wednesday, this milestone represents an impressive 15.6% growth. There has been a 15.6% growth over the previous fiscal year's output of 1.54 lakh crores. So, last year or last financial year, it was 1.54 lakh crores. And from here, it jumped to 1.78 lakh crores and a staggering 110% increase since financial year 20 to 21, which means that in less than 6 years or approximately 6 years, our defense exports have doubled. So at that point in time, the figure stood at 84.643 crore and now it's 1.78 lakh crores. Indigenous defense production has increased nearly fourfold from 43,746 crores in financial year 2013-2014. So, 400% increase in indigenous defense production, which means that there was a time when only government organizations were allowed to manufacture things for defense. They would have their partners, they would have their suppliers from the private sector, but complete weapon platforms were not being made by the private sector in India. There was a flip in policy. The government changed everything and suddenly, there was a time, I remember 6-7 years back, nobody in India spoke of drones. The only drones we knew were the ones which were available on websites. You could buy drones and they were used for, things like photography, making a film, things like that. I remember in Kashmir, the Rashtra Rifles would use it for a reconnaissance. Like there were terrorists holed up inside a house. And then it was too dangerous to send soldiers, so we'd send a drone. That was the limited purpose of the drones that we had. Today, we have more than 600 drone manufacturers in India. And the level of indigenization that is happening, it started off with zero. Today, in many places, it is 50, 60, 70% indigenization that is happening. And this is a miracle that has unfolded in less than 6 years. Defense PSUs and other PSUs accounted for 76% of the total production, while the private sector contributed 24%, which is a rise from 22% in financial year 24-25. So from 22%, but what we need, viewers, is for these figures to flip. And I hope in the next 5 years they flip. On the next 10 years they flip. We need the government manufacturing less and less, and we need the private sector manufacturing more and more. And I hope that these figures flip absolutely. A lot of this, I think, and this is my personal assessment, a lot of this 76% would also come from HAL. That is my sensing. That is my limited view into this entire 76% because it has its order book full. Mach 1 Tejas, Mach 2 Tejas, and so many helicopters and other platforms that HAL is manufacturing. A lot of it has to do with this 76%, or a lot of the 76% has to do with that. The share of the private sector is at an all-time high of around 42,000 crore in financial year 25-26, reflecting its expanding role in the defense ecosystem. This is exactly what you need. Without this, you can't have a defense manufacturing ecosystem. I mean, I love to give the example of the United States of America. Aircraft carriers. There is no bigger weapons platform than an aircraft carrier. It's like a floating city. An aircraft carrier which is $12 billion, $15 billion, $20 billion, made by private companies. The F-35, the finest, perhaps the finest fifth generation fighter aircraft in the world, is made by a private company. The weapons that they use are all made by private companies. And this is exactly what must happen in India at a later date. The growth in defense production over the years has tremendously contributed to achieving the record defense export of 38,424 crore in 25-26. So this is rupees 38,424 crores. This is $4 billion US plus that we've been able to export. Atmanirbhar Bharat strengthening India's defense power. If you see then, 2014, approximately 46,000 crore defense production. Now, 2026, approximately 1.5 lakh crore. And this is the real figure here. 1.78 lakh crore. And how Atmanirbhar Bharat push in defense? DPEPP policy, reforms for domestic manufacturing, 36,000 plus items identified for indigenization. And a lot of these items were actually put in the negative list by the Ministry of Defense. And they said that we have the capacity to manufacture this in India. We should not import these things. We should manufacture these platforms or this part of equipment or spare parts or entire platforms in India itself. So that is what contributed to 1.78 lakh crores. India currently exports defense equipment to over 80 countries, with the number of defense exporters increasing to 145 from 128 in the previous year. So last year, India sold to 128 countries. This year, India has sold to 145 countries. The BrahMos supersonic cruise missile remains India's marquee defense export, with the USD 375 million Philippines contract for shore-based anti-ship variants currently under execution. Vietnam has also signed a deal for the missile, while discussions with Indonesia are underway. Armenia has emerged as another major buyer, procuring Pinaka multi-barrel rocket launchers, Swati weapon locating radars, anti-tank munitions, and the Akash air defense system in recent years, marking one of India's significant breakthroughs in conflict-prone region. Now, you have Mauritius, you have so many other countries. I'll tell you country by country who has bought how much. But we are also talking about ALH Dhruv helicopters, Dornier 228 aircraft, and other maritime surveillance equipment and platforms. Indian shipyards have also delivered offshore patrol vessels and interceptor boats to countries in Africa and Southeast Asia. And they're saying that expansion of domestic manufacturing has been supported by measures such as positive indigenization list, covering over 5,500 defense items, preference for domestic procurement under the Defense Acquisition Procedure, and initiatives such as IDEX and Srijan portal. So what I was referring to as the negative list is actually the positive indigenization list. Old habit of saying negative list. So please pardon me. Now, these are India's top buyers, and Myanmar, 28%. So 28% of our exports go to Myanmar. We have Philippines at 19%. We have Armenia at 15%. We have Sri Lanka at 13%. Then Mauritius at 8.3%. Seychelles at 6%. Vietnam at 5.5%. And then there are other countries. Now, apart from BrahMos, I wouldn't say that these are, or apart from what we sell to Philippines and Armenia, I'm not saying that these are very big ticket items and billions upon billions of dollars. No, that's not true. But the miracle is that we have started off in the right direction. We've started off on the right foot. And now India is manufacturing weapons that countries want to buy. And a special mention must be made. Of course, Pinaka is an outstanding platform, and, BrahMos, no doubt, has proven its worth. But what is really coming out nowadays is, how people view Akash. And that is all after Operation Sindoor. Suddenly, everybody wants to know, what is this air defense platform that India has come up with? What is it? What is Akash? This is the question that most of the people are asking. Defense production up 15%, private sector share climbs to 24%. So according to the latest government data, defense public sector undertakings and other PSUs accounted for approximately 76% of total production, while the private sector contributed 24%, which is a rise from 22%. We've already discussed this. Capacity in the public sector has also grown, but is dwarfed by the production facilities being set up with private investment. Besides ammunition and explosives, new private sector units are investing in large-scale drone manufacturing, electronics production, manufacturing of long-range weapons and robotics. The share of the private sector is at an all-time high of around 42,000 crore in financial year 25-26, reflecting its expanding role in the defense ecosystem. Growth in defense production is also reflected in Indian military export data, with the number crossing a record, rupees 38,424 crore. So friends, this is what this video was about, how Indian weapons manufacturing is progressing by leaps and bounds. It all started off with a visionary who said that this is the way forward for the Indian defense sector. And today, we might have all these big figures and we're talking in billions upon billions of dollars, but initially there was one man who took the risk and he started the ball rolling. And today, while we celebrate the Indian manufacturing setup and hope that it will grow into one of the world's finest and largest and most successful manufacturing setups, let us not forget that man who made it possible, the late Manohar Parrikar. Thank you for watching Open Caller. I'll be back again next week. Till then, Jai Hind.